talking Terran.
Okay.
We were discussing every week we've really hit on balance, and we were
You know,
just talking
actually,
about. Go ahead.
Rotterdam would be a good to build off that last point we talked about before he joined in. He'd actually be a great person to talk to because, of course, he's Protoss for this. We were talking about how the matches really changed, like buffs changes, whatever. But it's less about like one thing changing to make a race OP. The point we were talking about just as you joined was the whole Widow Mines versus Charge Lot Storm, like how
hmm
that really changed the matchup. And the QXC brought up the point where now it's always Colossus because of the Widow Mines, even though you don't see the Widow Mines anymore. So I mean, just I guess your insight on that side for the Protoss point of view.
I've been actually talking about that pretty often lately, and obviously I agree that the Colossus openings are pretty boring, especially if it's the same over and over again. Like, I think of the last 15 PVTs that I've seen on Overgrowth, like 12 of them came down to that very standard fight at the third base of Protoss with the Vikings hovering over that dead space, and then can they kill the Colossus or not? It's like you cast almost the same game over and over again. But I must say, last weekend, Hero did prove me wrong though, because his games were extremely entertaining against Polt. And I don't know, for some reason, he sort of got away without playing just the standard Colossus opening. So maybe there is still a way, but obviously I enjoyed the old High Templar Charcelot a lot more than all the Colossus openings. I seriously cannot believe we were live, by the way, but okay.
I swear to God, if I didn't know you hadn't known, I would have brought you up. I thought you knew.
It's all good, no worries.
Just a small anecdote to this. I still think my favorite video of all time is Rotterdam with the upgrades, showing how OP those can be. Tabbing out of the game with a bunch of zealots today, moving into a 1-1 Terran army.
Wow.
I haven't seen this video.
Oh, you absolutely must.
It was a
It's
while
really
ago.
old. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I played a good song, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, what's your take on it, Riff?
Well, we're just because I mean, I I think a lot of this was like in kind of leading to the WCS finals and stuff, but part of this conversation like spawned just because we're talking about like is it the players that are OP? Is it the race that's OP? Like where a lot of this boils down to, and I don't know personally I feel like we talked about it a little bit how I think it's the players. Like yeah, we see a lot of Terran on top right now, but a lot of people forget like 8 of those results are Terran, but 5 of those 8 are Tasia. It's a little bit different than just saying Terran itself is OP.
Yeah, and right now it's not. It's like in the foreign scene, it's Bunny, and then as far as Koreans go, it's Bomber, Polt, and now Heart. And I guess Innovation in Korea, but Innovation's always been good. There's only been a couple of times where he's kind of slumped. Like it's it doesn't feel like there's like a wave of Terrans that came out of nowhere and all of a sudden crushing face. It's like the really good Terrans got just a little bit better than their Zerg or Protoss counterparts, and they started doing that much
I mean,
better.
look,
and
I mean,
taking
number one
titles.
guy in the world right now is Hyun, is Zerg. I mean, right? So,
Well,
Actually,
just like,
it's
yeah.
Bomber right now.
oh, okay. Well, sorry, right, as of last thing.
And so, from all that you get to see Roddy and Riff hosting in QXC with your personal experience as a Terran, do you feel going into the game, do you get the feeling that the match is even? Or when you go into it, how does it feel? Do you feel like, okay, I still have to, there's the equal chance of me screwing up the early game or screwing up the mid game and still losing? I guess a better way to phrase that question.
I'm trying to understand what you're asking me.
Oh, do you ever feel like the matching is even as you go into it?
StarCraft is a skill-based game. You win when you're better than your opponent. And aside from like various gambles, like I don't believe in the like you go in you don't like go into the game and you're like, oh, I'm playing Protoss, like I'm gonna lose just because it's Protoss. Like no, you're gonna lose because you're bad against Protoss or the Protoss is better against Terran than you are. And then
Hashtag Bronze League logic right there. Like, it's Protoss, might as well just GG.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It like people want to say that at lower leagues it's just about who plays better, and then like as you get higher and higher, like you start getting closer and closer to playing optimal. So then like the race and like actual inherent things come into play, and you have to like play better and better and better. But I don't think that ends when you get to GM. That doesn't end when you become a pro player. That doesn't end when you win a tournament. Everybody is always getting better all the time. So to say that like the way we understand TVP right now is the way that TVP must be played and is the best way to play it is just absolute nonsense. So when I play StarCraft, I go into each match thinking, how can I play better and what can I do to beat my opponent? Not like, oh, I'm going to lose this game because it's Protoss or it's Zerg or whatever.
I like that too, because I gotta tell you, from like casting a lot of stuff too, you can tell the players who like just play the matchup, right? You come into it, they're playing TVP, but then you get the players who play like TVP, but they also play the map, and they take a lot of other things into consideration. That's not just the linear way to play. I mean, Rotti said like it's boring, Colossus, every game all day, every day. But then you'll get players like Hearthstone who'll change it up ever so slightly because they'll play to their opponent or they'll play to the map, and maybe they'll build one Colossus and fake it into storms or something, right? So I think you're dead on. It's got to be about the players more than anything else. Like, people get better at StarCraft. People are good at StarCraft. It's not the races that make the players. It's the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay, I think I guess I could have phrased it a little better.
I mean, we can say that all day, every day, but there's obviously no denying that at a certain point early this year, Protoss was dominating. If you just look at the Premier League, like it was Protoss all the way, and a lot of Protoss in the finals. Yeah, like season 2, season 1, back then the GSLs, and basically it was Protoss everywhere. And like, hey, I was enjoying myself as a Protoss player, but obviously I was aware of the fact that PVT on Yongsu and Heavy Rain with 30-second time warps may have been a little too strong, those Blink Stalker openings. Like, it's hard to deny that. You can't just say, like, well, this Protoss all these Protoss just were completely outplaying the Terrans. Like, no, that was obviously just a little too strong. And you could say that was always a way, because Polt sort of found a way back then at IEM, but Polt was really, like, blind countering, adjusting, trying to counter what he thought was going to come. And it worked a few times, but in the finals it didn't work anymore against Hero. Just like right now, I don't think there's any denying that Terrans are doing pretty damn well. Like, I'm not saying that like you go into the game as a Terran, like, hey, I should win because I'm a Terran and my race is so much stronger. But obviously, the results do tell a story about the balance in the game right now.
Right, and I think kind of what I'm a little better phrasing of what I was trying to ask is more, look at Protoss, earlier in the year. I imagine that there had to have been people going into their games thinking, I have this strategy, that strategy. Blink all-ins on Frost, for instance, against Terran. They go in there knowing I have a superior advantage going into this round playing it. So I guess that is kind of what I'm looking at for the Terran side of things.
Like, I think it's safe to say when, as a Protoss player on Heavy Rain, you could have told the Terran, like, hey, good luck, have fun, mate. I'm going to Blink Stalker pressure you while expanding and drop a couple of time warps. And, like, even if the Terran knew, like, you could be as good as Meru. If you play against a very good Protoss with awesome execution of that build, it was still extremely, extremely hard to deal with. And, like, obviously that was not really right.
I don't disagree. Actually, I completely agree with what you just said. But to add on to that, we just had a bunch of TVP tournament stuff that we cast on Base Trade TV, and we did put back like Heavy Rain and Zelnaga Caverns and stuff. And there's instances where Mana and Hearthstone, like, they all went for it's Heavy Rain. Both times they went for Blink all-ins. But I think the difference was, and I want to say Destiny, I'm probably misremembering this. I don't remember if it was this show or something else. He had talked about how like the maps sucked, but like people were starting to figure out Blink all-ins, but before we really did, the maps changed. And it's worth noting that in those tournaments where, we brought back Heavy Rain like this most recent month, it was the Protoss who lost with the Blink all-in. So, I mean, at the time that you're referencing...
The Mothership Core, though, the Mothership Core changed that entire strategy.
Yeah, the 30-second.
I'm sure QXC will confirm, but like the 2 time warps that lasted 3 times as long, like you cannot compare it anymore. And the vision that it gave you as well. It's a completely different strategy.
The vision is
number one thing.
I think the vision is the most significant part of it, because the whole, like the biggest part of the Blink all-in, and it was like maybe the less obvious part, is that the Protoss player could see where your army was without you seeing where the Mothership Core was. And then they could put their Blink Stalkers wherever you weren't. Now you can see where the Mothership Core is flying around. Like, it's really hard for the Protoss to actually pinpoint your army without revealing that they know. And then you can kind of position yourself more correctly.
I mean, there's been a lot of changes, but the point I was trying to make with it is, like, we're seeing more people more willing to throw down bunkers, more willing to, like, pre-pull those SCVs and have them ready. Whereas, like, back then, it was still, like, just good luck, have fun, right?
I think to say that, like, the blink all in, even before the nerfs, was something that was, going to dominate the matchup forever, is kind of it's basically saying that like players can't come up with a way to defeat that one single strategy. And it's not like
Yeah.
a very complicated strategy. There's a lot of signs of when it's coming. It's hits relatively early in the game, so you can actually have like, pre-recorded response to that build. But that doesn't deny the fact that it was incredibly powerful. Like I don't think the old 6K blink was ever going to go away, but I definitely think that people were going to find a way to deal with it. And once they find a way to deal with it and the matchup equalizes, whatever, it's like a 50-50, then it takes some new strategy from one side or the other to really push it into this realm that we see where like one race is super dominant for long periods of time. I'm not sure what it is now with Terrans.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring
What-
that up because like it's curious. Right brings up the point with the results speak for themselves, and they do. I mean, you look at WCS America it was, I mean it's
Yeah, like WCS America is obviously it's a Terran festival, but in defense of all the Terran players out there, I honestly and genuinely believe that the Terran players in WCS America are better StarCraft players than the non-Terrans. Because I mean, we have Paul, Bomber, and Tasia. Tasia didn't make it this time, and even Hard has really been stepping up his game. So even though like I'm happy that you agree with me and I agree with you, WCS America is perhaps the wrong tournament to bring up because I genuinely believe that those guys are just better than the rest of the people in the league.
right, and I think that just goes back to my original point where I was saying like it's the players that make the races and not the other way around. But what QXC says, I'm just thinking like I actually don't know because a lot of those guys you don't exactly see Pult just wrecking with Widowmine abuse from the patch Terran or anything like that. It's kind of curious to think about like what exactly it is that pinpoint what's making things better versus worse, I guess.
It feels a little different with Terran. Besides, well, I guess when Hellbats got changed, there were like a whole slew of Hellbat timings, but it doesn't really feel like in general Terran doesn't like a tournament doing timing after all in after timing against anyone really. And that's kind of what it feels like when Protoss is doing really well. It's not like super solid macro games. Most of the time, it's like there's some new like 8-minute attack that's super strong and like nobody can deal with it. And like the whole matchup, like when 6K Blink was really strong, you didn't see the Blink all in every single game, but the threat of that Blink all in completely changed the matchup. It was like every build that Terran did had to take into account the fact that Protoss could do that attack. And if Protoss decided to do that attack and Terran wasn't ready, like the game just ended.
Well, I think
and I don't-
at the same
I don't
time too,
know-
it's a little unfair though for Protoss. Like, I mean, they kind of get some unnecessary flack too because when Protoss do win like that, like it looks really easy, even though it's not. But it just looks that way because of the way it snowballs. Like we're talking a lot about PvT, but I think PvZ is a better example of this. Like with 4 gates attacking like a third base, right? So I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to get like a proper perspective too because I think a lot of the community just looks at that. They say, "Oh, Protoss is easy," but it actually took a lot of skill to get to that point where it crests over and becomes easy.
But yeah, I mean, a big part of the game is just the strategy you choose,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the reasons that there's so many like Me Too kind of players, people who don't really think for themselves. They just do whatever they see on the big tournaments, because you can just raise your win percentage by just doing a better strategy. And when you play against someone who doesn't know how to deal with a specific strategy, like their mechanics can be better. They can be a better overall StarCraft player and still lose. And a lot of the time, that's what people get so upset about. Is they've seen games from a specific player, they see the way they play the mid and late game, and you watch them play, and you're like, this guy is horrible at the mid and late game. And then they choose very specific strategies that play to their strengths, and they win in a really decisive manner. And people don't like that. People want the best StarCraft player. They want one of two things. They either want the best overall StarCraft player to win, or they want their favorite player to win. If Snoot wins using Swarm Host and all his games are 3 hours, like people would they'd probably still be okay with that because they want Snoot to win. And the same thing with Scarlet or other fan favorites. Like when Stefano does his ridiculous Swarm Host strategies, people are really happy about that because he's winning with them or whatever.
I just actually finished casting a lot of Snoot Stormhost games this morning, so
yeah. But like if a lesser known player did that stuff, people would be much more upset. Like when Firecake was doing it, people were not happy at all. They felt like Mana was being robbed. You know, they were, to his defense, Mana being the more popular player. But then at the same time, you know, if somebody comes out of nowhere and they play a strategy that looks like it takes a lot of skill, you know, you can, like when you watch Hero play, especially his games against Poland, you know, the way he was playing, you could tell that he was doing a ton of stuff. Like it's really hard to be angry at the way Hero was playing because you could obviously tell that like other players cannot play like that. They simply are not fast enough. They don't understand that style well enough. But then you watch someone like, you know, when Haas did that cannon rush against Jaedong, or when Huck cannon rushes someone, you know, when some random Protoss cannon rushes someone, when Hitman, you know, does his ridiculous all-ins against Scarlet, like that's the kind of builds that make people upset because they look really easy to do. They're pretty easy to copy. And they see these players play longer games, and they just can't do anything. You know, they're so bad at the other parts of the game that it makes people really upset about it.
Okay, so moving on from the talk of Terran and the talks of the the feelings people have towards these different strategies and the feelings that people get watching people do a strategy and then their perception of a player or a race from that. Going into the WCS now, we just had the American finals wrap up, and both foreigners were knocked out pretty damn quickly. It was Scarlet was 3-0'd by Hart, and Huck was 3-0'd by Hyun. Rotti, you saw those games firsthand. What'd you think of those?
It was a little unfortunate, to say the least. Scarlet, the series against Hart, I knew going into it was going to be extremely difficult for her because I've been showing a lot of love to Hart over the last 2-3 seasons of WCS America, and in particular I think his TVZ is light years ahead of his other matchups. And I didn't even feel, despite that he won against both Zergs that he played against, that he truly showed how good he is in this matchup. But 3-0 Scarlet, 3-1 Hyun, that's really impressive. I think it all came down to game number 1. I think there was a critical moment where Scarlet was actually in an okay-ish position, but she did like 5 things at once. He went up to Corruptus, +1 flyer attacks, +1 melee, +1 carapace, roach speed, and speed. That's so many upgrades, while Hart just followed it up with a 2-base all-in. He was able to make it work. And I feel that, that was a momentum shift in the series. And in game number 2 and 3, just most things worked out for Hart, and it just didn't really come together for Scarlet. And I don't know if you want my opinion on the Hawk series as well. I can give it to you.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, I felt that Hawk in game number 1 is also pretty much the most deciding moment in that series. They're playing a game on Catalina, and I think Hawk is seconds away from stabilizing a couple of times. He has like 4 Immortals against an only Roach-based army, and normally you would say that's almost good enough, but he just didn't really have the vision, and he kept being surprised. And every single time when he almost stabilized, there were Roaches in the main, Roaches in the natural, Roaches trying to snipe an Immortal or a third base. And it's really deceiving, because it kind of looked maybe to the average viewer that like, man, Hyun is just completely wrecking Hawk right now. And in the end he was, but in those moments, if Protoss one time actually gets up to like 155, 160 supply, then Roaches are just going to melt and they won't do anything anymore. So if Hawk had a tiny bit more maybe patience or slightly more composure and 1 or 2 times had his units in better position, I think he can win game on Catalina. And then you look at a different series, because now game number 2 he starts off with a cannon rush that failed. Well, as a Protoss player, if you try to cannon rush and it failed, you're not feeling good. From bad to worse, like 6 Zerglings run into the main base and kill like 5 probes. So just a disaster game 2 for Hawk. And then game number 3, on paper his opening was good, and I specifically asked him about this last night. I didn't want to do it immediately after his games, because he was going for a 4 gateway opening against a 3 base Zerg that didn't have gas. And I really love that. Like if I'm the Protoss, I'm having the time of my life, because you can't possibly lose your Stalkers unless they get surrounded, but otherwise you can't lose them if your control is good. But Hawk, even though he wanted to go for it, he had a probe out on the map. The probe got found immediately, and that's kind of tricky. You could still try to do it by just dropping 2 or 3 pylons or just running around with the probe and drop pylons. And I still think it would have worked. And he said, like, yeah, going over the replay, he's like, that's what I should have done. He's like, but I was already down 0-2 in this series, and you know, you don't want to lose that third game. What if speed suddenly is ready, and then I just like play a absolutely horrific or horrendous game number 3 as well, and I lose 0-3, and everybody's like, haha. He's like, if it was a different game, I would have done it. He's like, but I felt as a decider, I didn't want to take the risk, but he's like, I obviously put myself behind already by opening with 4 gates and not doing anything with it, so I should have tried, and it would have gone a lot better for him. So obviously the Koreans were better, but the luck was also not on the side of our fellow Canadians.
They were both Canadians. How much of a risk is cannon rushing in this map pool? I feel like last season it was very strong. Season before that, perhaps stronger, but I don't see a lot of viability for it to really do that significant damage, especially if it gets scouted quickly enough.
I mean, it all depends on the situation, to be honest. Like, if Zerg players go hedge first, you can still try to cannon rush, and it's not a wrong play. Just ask In Control. In Control would say it's the right play. And, he would be right in some ways. Hawk's choice to cannon rush on Merry-Go-Round was not a wrong one, because it was a hedge first. It's just, I'm not saying that Hawk is a bad cannon rusher, but I also don't think that it's something that he really excels at. And I know it sounds stupid, because, how hard can it be to cannon rush, but it actually makes a big difference where you place your buildings, when you reveal that second probe, or how you try to get away with it. And Sean, he didn't underreact, he just pulled all the drones immediately, and Hawk, he lost one of his first probes immediately, and then it's really hard to pull it off, because you need to get a lot of buildings down. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things too is the maps. There's not as much closed off space behind the mineral lines. Like you look at Catalina or Nimbus, for example, you can't just do that sick little 2 pylons, 1 cannon move that you could in the past. So I think that definitely affects a lot of the cannon rushing mechanics. But I don't know, man. Like, there's some players out there like Stardust who they'll find a way no matter what the map is.
Yeah.
There could be like no walls whatsoever and no mineral lines, and you could still cannon rush it.
So. Going back to the Zerg, the Zerg Scarlet Heart, I think that the early game, in a lot of ways, is sometimes where Zerg seem to struggle now against Terran. What do you...
that's where everyone struggles against Terran, because Terran doesn't have a late game.
So wait, hold on. The sidetrack. I didn't get into this conversation with you before, but you made the comment on the way to dinner in Detroit. You said Terran. One of the things that need to be fixed about Terran is that we can't get to our late game. And so, what do you think our late game?
So I think from a design standpoint, the 2 things that are wrong with Terran is that the late game army is like way too hard to transition to from bio, and that the bio army is way too strong. If you can solve every single problem in the game by just being better at moving around with bio medevac, like, doesn't that seem wrong? If you took Terran and you removed like the starport tech except for medevacs, you remove Reapers, like let's say Terran was just Marine, Marauder, medevacs, and Hellions. You could play like every single matchup up until a certain point, and you could like win. You add Ghosts and Vikings for to play against Protoss, and like that's a complete Terran army, and that seems really wrong to me. And so it's kind of those 2 things, and like because none of the units you would actually make for your late game benefit from any of the upgrades from bio. You don't have like a nice smooth transition, and the late game units don't really seem to do a whole lot in most of the matchups. Like you have Thors against Zerg and they're effective, but like unless you're playing mech from the beginning, it feels way too hard to get into the late game of Terran. And Biomedevac is so strong that it's like, well, why would I? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't I just try and win the game at 15, 20, 25 minutes? Because the time it takes to actually make a reasonable amount of late game units for Terran, it's just so incredibly long. It's like several minutes where you're investing resources in a way that's not helping you. And then you compare it with the way the other races. Zerg obviously is the easiest time transitioning into the late game army because of Larva.
Right.
And I don't really know what the difference is between Protoss and Terran because the production mechanics are very similar, but it always feels like Protoss can make the transition a little bit easier.
Roddy, you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think when it comes to Terran, I'll just agree with QXC. But no, everything he said, of course, makes a lot of sense. So I don't have much to add.
Anything from you, Riff?
No, I don't disagree. There's some situations though where I mean, like you're gonna see weird stuff. Like, what is Terran late game technically? Because there's some people who can do weird, dumb things. They'll get you to battle cruisers real quick, and that doesn't guarantee you a win. There's some people who just play the mech style, go mass ravens. This still doesn't guarantee you a win. Like, I agree that the balance shift of Terran, as far as like where their strength scales as the game goes on, could definitely be tweaked with. But I don't know. I kind of actually like the way it is, at least from like an observing point of view. Obviously, not a player over here like these guys, but I don't know. It's not something I'm happy with, but it's not something I'd be upset with if it never changed.
What I think would be cool. So I was saying like, oh, going into late game, the assumption with late game is that you make different units, but I don't think that necessarily has to be true. Like if there was, let's say, a range of infantry upgrades that were only available after you built a fusion core, then you could make Biomedevac become a late game composition. Like the big thing is that it's just not supply efficient. If you compare an army of Colossus, Tempest, High Templar, like you're dumping way more resources into much less supply than Marine Marauder, Medevac, Viking, Ghost.
Yeah, that's true.
And if there was some way to like, fusion dance two Marauders and make a super Marauder and, spend some extra resources.
Where's the Terratron? Like where you combine the buildings, right? To make that one giant robot? Like how sick would that be? You're like, I don't need reactors anymore. I'm maxed out. Let's turn these 5 Braxes to like a Megatron type thing.
Yeah, what about a lot of people say that they like Terran because it's the quintessential sci-fi, the scrappy human, weaklings that rely on their bullets and their ingenuity to survive against the technologically superior alien race versus the just overwhelming bug race. Would you say that maybe the Marine Biomedevac style is more just I guess in tune with that kind of perspective?
Yeah, I'm just gonna stop you and say that if you're balancing your game based on themes, then you're probably doing it wrong. It doesn't matter if Terran is true to their identity. Like, let's make a game that's fun to play. We don't need a story here. We don't need logic in terms of like does this fit? Like, just make it cool to play and fun.
I mean, there isn't really a whole lot of logic in SC2 anyway, because like even yesterday, I see like a Marine chasing a Viking, and only I think in StarCraft could a man with a gun outrun a flying spaceship. So.
How about how Marauders have more range than Marines but can't shoot up? Like, I mean, someone explain that to me.
Well, because they're robots.
The shoulder pads. Go.
Oh, the shoulder. Okay, so they just why don't they just lean back? Like just
they can't. No, they can't. That would take too much time.
Maybe that's the fusion core upgrade. Give them a towel to lay on with a little umbrella, and then they can shoot up.
Marauders that shoot up, Hellbats that shoot up from Utilisks. I'd like that.
Actually, I really like that we're talking about the game being kind of fun, because there are aspects of it, like, I'm going to go with the hashtag Rotti build here, where, like, you do proxy Tempest, like, there's no logic or balance or anything that comes into it. That's just BS, and it's fun, and sometimes it works. Most of the time it works.
It's actually very good.
It's a Chinese strategy.
Yeah, but I came up with it. I did it before.
It's hashtag Rotti.
Honestly, I did it before because I know that one of the kids did it in his. I think one of the Taiwanese Protoss players did it against MMA on Whirlwind, but I did it before he did it, and I streamed it.
All right,
but I mean, that's kind of what I love about the game, that the fact that you can still have those things, right? Like, it got brought up last season with Pig Baby and all that, and like, turns out you can actually beat stuff like that. What do you know? Who knew? But like, there's those fun aspects, and I think that's what I like most about StarCraft. Like, you've got this standard play that we've been talking about, like boring, whatever, but then you also get those weird ones that can be effective and that don't take away from the game but actually add to it.
Like, sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, here's what I want. This is my wish list for Legacy of the Void. infantry that require a fusion core to build.
That'd be kind of neat. But like, that would
Because-
be like,
So
Like a
because then
battlecruiser
you'd have like a late game Terran unit, and it could be something like, Tempests are 300, 200 for 4 supply, like an infantry unit that's 300, 200 for 4 supply or whatever, and that allows you to use the upgrades that you had early, but then actually go into something that's not just Marine Marauder Medevac. That's all I want. That's what I decided.
Well, but what would it do? Shoot nukes or something?
Yeah, that's what's
Roddy,
sick.
blow my mind right now. What if they had an upgrade to make it so nukes like took less time? How cool would that be? Like for the late game.
Or you could double nuke. Like, okay, how about this? There's an upgrade. There's an upgrade at the Ghost Academy that makes it so when a ghost drops, when they put their sensor on a location, when a nuke starts dropping, nukes will continue to drop every 5 seconds as long as the ghost is still targeting, and there are more nukes in Ghost Academies.
That sounds. Yes, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like a fellow Terran, and even I'm like that could be a little OP.
Yeah, I do like the idea for Rift to let the nukes come down a little faster as well. Because let's be honest, like for the casual viewer, nukes are one of the most exciting things in the game. I think it's actually pretty hard to play against as well late game. Maybe that's just me as I'm not. I'm okay, but I'm not top tier. But if I play against Terran players that are clearly better than me, they can drive me insane with nukes. And like, yeah, I can find the first, I can find the second, but nuke number 4, 5, and 6 is just a matter of time, man, before I lose my mineral line. And like, even though I suck against it, I do realize that it takes skill, so it's a fun thing in the game, and it's really exciting. So I do think we can maybe address the nuke. It's actually a good point, Riff, because I don't think right now that anyone would ever say that it's too strong. If anything, it just takes too long. It's only good situationally.
The nuke, all it really does right now is either catch a base when you're not paying attention with probes, or it's the biggest force field that zones out a Protoss army that says don't walk here. Like that's all it does right now, and it kind of sucks. It would be cool, like hell, even scale down the damage a bit just so you can land it better or something. I mean, it'd be cool to see more of those.
Yeah, I can dig it. I'll remember it, and Riff, I'll write it down. I'll bring it up.
Bring it up with the big wigs at BlizzCon, like.
Well, so there's going to be, I think there's some fun coming up a little before Legacy of the Void, and that's the Dream Pool. And we're on map number 4 being announced now.
This is Ohana.
Was it Ohana?
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Shut up.
Don't say it. Kick him from the call, quick, before he gets a chance.
That was never me, by the way. That was always Bitter, just so you guys know. That was never
implying you two will ever be viewed as individuals of one another.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. Him and Nathanius has some nice chemistry.
man, I don't know. Nate, I got no respect for Nate right now without that facial hair. I don't know why he did that. It was a mistake.
It's the second time he's done it that I
he
can remember.
I asked him, he said, well, mistakes were made.
Maybe he lost a bet. He won't tell anyone though.
I would love if he showed up at BlizzCon and he's got like this foam beard made of like fake like black material or something.
He grows the facial hair like so freaking quick. He will probably have his beard back by the end of next week. I swear, this is insane. Kid is 21, but he grows more facial hair than me, Kappa.
He's Russian. That's why. Just hairy people. But back to the Dream Pool. So we've got Cloud Kingdom, Metalopolis, Daybreak, and Family. And I think that
wow,
they're going to be some... no, but seriously, I mean, what are you guys thinking? You got... we'll go with you, Riff. What do you... Or Kevin, go ahead.
Well, I'm starting to talk, so let's do that. It's not as bad as I was expecting it to be. But it's not over yet.
No, I will bet 5 gosh darn pizzas that we get Steps of War.
I'm like, I can't believe that Metalopolis was the second voted map. Like, Metalopolis is like one of the worst maps we ever had, and people are so eager to have it back.
No, you know what it is? I'm telling you, tinfoil hats guys, there was no votes. Blizzard just wanted to make like, those votes. And they're like, we already got these maps, so we got to justify it. So they're not like, wow, you guys are bullshit picking Metalopolis first. Now it looks like the people picked it, right? And now it's good to go.
So Or which one are you looking forward to out of the 4 that have been announced, Kevin?
Which one?
I mean,
Oh yeah,
Cloud Kingdom is going to just be blinks all day. Daybreak is going to go split map, late game, boring my ass off. It might be Metalopolis, man.
you can live to the gold on Metalopolis.
Oh
I'm
my
just
god,
saying.
no, not Metalopolis. The natural is like impossible to wall off. It's just a big open space.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Painless.
That's true.
I think-
And imagine close air position playing against Tempest. What up? I don't need to proxy anymore.
Well, they did say it would be cross only.
You can
so
hit the
there's
mineral
that
line
one.
Oh.
from the dead space. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be
maybe-
so gross. Oh my god, I just realized you're right. You can do just that. You don't even need to like. It's not even spots. You can just Rotterdam it up. Like scout early, proxy
Well,
to the
you
side.
know
You're good to go. Like
Oh, well, they did say Metalopolis is only cross.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a good thing. Even though we'll miss out on some fun as Protoss players, but I do think that's a good thing. But yeah, that map is going to be ridiculous for Protoss because Protoss can never take the natural against Zerg. Zerg is just going to open up with speed, I think, most of the time, or do some stupid hedge blocks or whatever. I think that map will be very, very difficult. Like, even the turbo is so hard. You need that stupid wall off with 2 pylons and 3 gateways on one side of the higher plateau. Oh, it's a nightmare.
guys, don't worry. Daedalus Point was okay, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Ugh. That map was gone like that. I was
Yeah,
I
That
think
was actually
everyone
played in
hated it.
GSL Codes. There were a few Protoss players who were very, very sour that map ever made it into competitive play.
Yeah, there were a couple tweets and like post game expressions of like this map is literally the worst map I've ever played on. There was like Blizzard, please fire whoever made this map. Like, oh my god, he really does.
It was really fun though, because when I played that map against Zerg, it really felt like, nothing to lose, but everything to win. Because if you won on Daedalus, that's like worth a fist pump. Because you're like, man, I just did this thing that's really not supposed to happen.
well, I hated that they tried to sell it like, you know what, this will innovate gameplay. They'll find new ways to do this.
Yeah.
But then everyone just cannon rushed like every single time. Like
Yeah.
such innovative gameplay. Whoa.
It's like,
I mean,
well,
there was no way around for Protoss. It's just you cannot
Yeah.
rush or you
You get 4 gate,
one
think you're
gate.
natural. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, or you 1 gate expand and then 2 more gates, but it's just such an outdated playstyle that like Zerg will always have a massive economic lead.
the problem with maps like Alterzim and Daedalus, like even though they promote new game style, very few people are actually going to take the time to learn a strategy that only works on one map. Like,
Yeah, and it's only here
Why-
for like X many days. Like we
yeah,
don't know
like,
how long
why
seasons
why would a
last.
Protoss ever learn how to play with a ramp like Daedalus when they can just cannon rush every time on that map and then continue to learn strategies that actually work on every other map that they're playing on? Like, you can't force innovation like that through a ladder map. It makes a lot more sense in Pro League, where it's like you have 1 week to play on this absolutely ridiculous map, and you have nothing else to prepare for. Like you
Like
can
map like
you can
Arcanine
take the
stuff,
time to do something crazy just for that map, because that win is so important. But you play on ladder, you play in random tournaments. Like I have to prepare for an infinite amount of opponents on random maps that I can't know when they're coming. Like, I'm not going to spend all my time preparing for this one map and this one matchup. I might not even play a Protoss player on Daedalus Point or whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd rather the latter is, like, almost entirely standard maps. Maybe, like, 1 or 2 that are weird that people can veto out, but, yeah.
Well, I think there's 2 really important things we need to consider. Like if you're following any amount of pros or casters like Apollo on Twitter right now, you're seeing a lot of complaints about how this is going to negatively affect players, which is it sucks because that's the minority, right? Like it's weird to consider that, but like pro players are the minority in this situation. But I think like for a viewing perspective too, like I really hope this is a short season with these maps, because I gotta tell you, Ohana was cool when it was new, but the amount of games I've seen of Ohana, Daybreak, Belshir, like I'm still sick of these maps and they're not even around anymore. Like not even from like a casting point of view, but from like a watching point of view. So like I mean, it's like Overgrowth and King Sejong right now. Like how many times are those the first 2 map picks in like every best of
Yeah.
any ever, right? Like
But like that's why. Okay, so Riff, so I'm gonna ask you, would you rather just have like a very fun month with those 7 indeed way overplayed, but in a different era of StarCraft 2 time, or would you rather play another 30 days on King's Young Station and Overgrowth?
exactly, that's the problem, right? So I saw, I don't know who was the suggested it first. I've seen several people say at this point, I would love if they made this like, I don't know, 3 months, a week, whatever, but like through the unranked system rather than the ranked. And
Yeah,
then like
like I do agree that like when I think about it, they could have had an option where they have 2 map pools, the current one with the 7 maps and then like the 7 dream pool. But I think stuff like that, like it's a lot easier said than done. It's really hard to integrate that to Bet.net, and I don't know how many coders they have working on that kind of stuff. I understand the pro player point, yada yada, but like you said, that is a massive minority. There are like 0.2% of the people out there that truly make a living out of this game. The rest is just fans and stuff. I think this will bring a lot of fans back. I am pretty sick
Yeah.
of the current map pool already. Of course, I'm hyped for BlizzCon and stuff, but yeah, I can't see there, especially PvT with Colossus openings. Like it's just like it's done for me. So I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to bring a lot of nostalgic memories back. I even think that some of the former pro players that are officially quote unquote retired will play a couple of games again, you know, just because it's not like they play a completely new game. They at least play the maps they know. And it's not going to be a super long season. It won't be there for half a year, so people don't have to scream. I think it's going to be fine. I saw Apollo's argument earlier today, and like we went a little back and forth, by the way, but he's like, well, I just wish that they didn't do it because it's really bad for the pro game as well. The pro gamers can, of course, always just play custom games with each other. And
yeah, exactly. I mean,
if I recall
that's what they do
correctly-
anyways right now. Yeah.
Exactly. If I recall correctly, that's still the best way to prepare for a tournament rather than brainlessly playing ladder games and not just preparing for you or not working on your weak points and stuff. But let's not forget that, like after WCS, the next few tournaments, or I mean after BlizzCon, won't give out WCS points anymore anyway, right? So none of those tournaments, like Home Story Cup is 4 days later. If they still want to use these 7 maps, that's completely fine because 4 days is not going to forget people how to play on these games because, you know, we couldn't ladder on it for 4 days. So Home Story Cup is already irrelevant to this discussion. Then you could say DreamHack Winter. But why would DreamHack Winter use the 7 maps that we currently have? Why would they use these 7 maps at DreamHack Winter Finals? Give me one reason. There's no WCS points on the line because the year is done. They can do whatever they want. They can have their own maps. Just announce it like a solid 6 weeks in advance or whatever. They can pick some maps throughout the entire year because DreamHack Winter is a final over the entire year. So all these players played on maps of WCS Season 1, 2, and 3. Why would they just go with the 7 maps that we currently have? So I don't really think it's like a valid argument like, oh, the Dream Pool is really bad because the pro gamers hate it. It's like, yeah, I can understand it's not ideal, but just because 18 players are qualified for DreamHack Winter doesn't mean that we can't go with this idea, right?
I like that you brought up DreamHack too, because that's fine. They were the guys who were using like the 4-player spawn Star Station long after everyone had like adapted the 2 version of it, and I'm like, DreamHack can't kind of get away with whatever they want. I think personally, I'm okay. Like they could have a really dumb season that could last to the end of the year, as long as at the end of it we get cool maps, like cool new maps. Because what I would love to see is every season we've had, there's always been like only 3 or 4 new ones, and they've kept 3 of the old ones, and those are the ones that get overplayed. Like the reason Overgrowth and King Stage Young are picked is because they're left over from the last season. I think that if we got a brand new map pool, like 7 new maps or something, like that would be the best case scenario.
And I think that's
good maps.
I think that's going to happen, and that's what I hope for as well. Though I completely agree with you. Like I'm like digging the dream pool just because you know it will be fun for me as well.
It'll
to
be
play
fun,
some
yeah.
Of these. Yeah, but I completely agree. We shouldn't be on this for 3.5 months or something. That would be too long. But I know that Blizzard will announce the new map pool for WCS 2015 way ahead of time. It's not like that this map pool is going to be running till February. And it's like, okay, guys, this is the WCS schedule. Qualifiers start next week. Oh, and these are your 7 maps. Like, that's not how it's going to go. So I agree with you. You know, Dream Pool, now it's fun. But yeah, give us 7 new maps and make sure that, you know, we'll just start an adventure all together. The casters, the gamers, the casuals. And we'll just figure out which are going to be our favorite maps of the next 7 map pool. But I completely agree. You won't have 2 maps that will be super overplayed because all 7 of them will be new. And that's, of course, what I hope for as well, but I'm pretty positive that will happen.
So
I like this idea that they have more time to actually make a full round of new maps, and That would be
Well,
nice. I wish they would do a little bit more with consulting people before they put some of these maps out. Like, this
Yeah.
pool, especially
should have never
Deadwing,
happened.
Foxtrot, people, like, you could play Deadwing once and you're like, horizontal spawns are ridiculous. This map shouldn't have horizontal spawns. And to me, when you can play a map 2 times and realize like how stupid something is, then that says to me that Blizzard isn't really testing the maps before
Well,
they put them on, or they're not testing them in a meaningful way. And if they have, maybe they don't have enough time, they don't have enough people, but if they do the Dream Pool now, that's zero work at all in terms of development, testing, whatever. And then for the next season, a month before it goes live, if they reached out to some people where they had a preseason or they did something where these maps are put in front of people before they're actually played in tournaments, that would be really nice to me.
It's actually a really good point by QXC, because a map like Daedalus Point, of course, should have never made it just in the GSL like that. Like, hey, here's a new map and we're going to play on it. And especially because there was no veto system in that. I like a lot of the things that Blizzard has done, of course, for our game. I think, it's all good for us to have constructive criticism, because that's going to make everything better. But I do think that what Kev just said is a very good point. Some of the maps should indeed be tested or should be sort of announced and then see how it goes, rather than just like, hey, here are the new maps, good luck and fun. And then within a week we realize that something is just never going to get used, and then we're already stuck with only 6 maps for the entire season. So
Right.
good point.
we've already done this though, is the thing, and I suggested this in my Dream Pool tweet, and I got that's interesting response. But Team Liquid Red Bull map making competitions, the second place maps were never bad. Well, exception of the lava map and stuff like that. That's a whole nother can of worms. But I mean, like,
That was
we've had
awesome,
several.
man.
It was awesome, but it wasn't balanced in the slightest. But we've had several map making contests through Team Liquid, through Red Bull, whatever, throughout the past year and a half, and a lot of second place finishers got forgotten about because we picked Habitation Station for the ladder, and they forgot there's 7 other maps that were tested and played by players like Parting and Jockshi and others that were actually not too bad. So I was kind of thinking, like, why not? It would save time for Blizzard. They've been tested already by good players. Like, why not dip back into those second place finishers? Why not grab the third place finishers of like these maps that look interesting, that look appeasing to the eye, and aren't broken as fuck? Daedalus Point.
Where did Daedalus come from? Was that a Blizzard
I think
creation?
that was just a Blizzard creation. Yeah, like some of the best maps, in my opinion. Okay, Yansu was definitely not the best map of its season, but it's one of the better ones that you would see not always get vetoed. I think is a better way to phrase that, depending on the matchup. But
I would say Yunsu, for its time, was an exceptionally good map, and it wasn't until it was around for several months that people were like, okay, like, there are some parts of this that we don't like.
right, but I mean, Yansu still influences maps. Like, this is why I'm using this one as an example. Deadwing is like 4-player Yansu when you think about the base layouts for the first to the third and your fourth. That map came to influence a map that's around now. That map itself was good for a while. That was made by a community member, not a Blizzard hiree, not someone who was like committed. It was like Cetera. He's like an Australian StarCraft 2 map maker. So like, I mean, these are the guys that I kind of wish would have like the Blizzard would just be like, hey, you guys already do this for free. Can we give you like minimal pay to make us like a whole season of new maps? Like, they would do it. People would test it. Hell, I would, with base trade TV money, throw a contest just to test them. Like, there's so much community involvement that I feel could be here. And we're getting better with Blizzard because you got Sion and Zoevia and the StarCraft Twitter itself, like, getting more involved with like everything, that I feel like there should be an amazing map pool for 2015. I'm just afraid that there won't be.
Well, we're expecting it. We were saying that, like QXC was saying, we've got this kind of recycled map pool where a lot of work wasn't put into it. So we're hoping that this time has been taken to make a brand new map pool.
Yeah, that would be nice.
It would. So I from non-pro perspective, I guess my question is, with this map pool being on the ladder, because a lot of people don't. I say the majority of people probably don't practice with custom games.
Yeah, I think it's actually going to be really exciting because it means that a lot of people are going to be looking for custom games. And often, as a pro player, it's actually quite hard to get people to play customs. A lot of people have like ladder addiction.
And I think I think it comes down to being stubborn as well, Kev. And because I know this is how I used to function in my Warcraft 3 days. But even when I knew that, like, let's say, converting it to StarCraft 2 thirds, I knew that PvZ is my weakest matchup. I still rather play some custom games in PvP just to feel better about myself, because I know I'm pretty good in the matchup, and I don't like to set myself up for disappointment. And I see this so often in the foreign scene as well. I know there are multiple pro gamers out there that could really are so much better in one matchup than the other ones, but they're still just laddering rather than sitting down and playing custom games and playing their weakest matchup, because playing your weakest matchup means that most likely you're setting yourself up for a nice losing session. And it seems like in a weird way people rather avoid that. Obviously, this doesn't go for the top dogs, and I'm not saying that all people function like this because it's not smart, but I know there are people out there, and I don't know, maybe you can confirm.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I found
I would agree too. I've seen a lot like that.
my biggest problem with trying to find customs is I'm either not on a schedule that allows me to play with other people easily. So like the Europeans are almost always done practicing by the time I start, because I've been waking up quite late recently. And of the Americans, most people, a lot of people won't custom. And of the people that do custom or have agreed to custom, they'll only play like 1 or 2 games, and if they lose, they'll stop playing. And it's like there's just you just can't practice with someone if beating them means they're going to get angry and log off. You can't have a discussion with those people. You can't communicate at all. And I almost feel bad doing some of my strategies because I got dirty strategies, especially against Zerg. Like I've got builds that I know.
QXC, we know you had a 2-Rax, man. Okay, we know you had a 2-Rax.
No, not 2-Rax, man. Like 2-Rax is the expected dirty. Like Zergs will get mad if you 2-Rax them in customs, but I've got some other builds that are like real special QXC builds, and I just know if I do them to certain players, like they will not practice with me, and it's just ridiculous because. Like, I'm going to do that build in a tournament. I need to practice it and have it be ready for that. And if I can think of it, some fucking Korean can think of it too. Like, just because it's some stupid build I came up with doesn't mean they're not ever going to see it. And it's like, well, I'm literally making the decision. Do I want to do standard play so that this person will continue to play customs with me? Or do I actually want to play to win as if it's a tournament, knowing that after 1 or 2 games they're going to be done if I do it well enough? And that's kind of the state of custom games for me in general. So the new map pool, I never even thought about it. The fact that more people will be looking for custom games is actually pretty exciting. I like that.
So
the enemy of my enemy.
Give me 10 seconds, by the way, guys. Be right back.
Yep. So with that, Kevin, how do you approach? Let's say you find the partner that isn't going to get pissed off when you do your dirty strats, or isn't going to get pissed off when if you stomp them. How do you approach it in a constructive way that you get the most out of your practice session? You go into it, you go through the game whether you win or lose. How do you approach the next game? What do you do to improve?
The biggest thing, so what Rotti was saying, if you have a weakness, it's good to pinpoint it and like work through it and improve upon it. That is often, instead of like finding the solution, like, I guess a lot of the time when I play customs, I play as if it was a tournament rather than as if it was practice. And so what I'll do is like the first game, I'll kind of test my opponent and see where their strengths lie, and then I'll optimize my build in a way that take advantage of that, which is perhaps not making me improve overall skill-wise as much as possible, but I think it's more realistic. If I play someone in a tournament, let's say I play Snoop, who's really patient, really good in a macro game. We play the first game, I take some risks, get ahead economically, I still lose. Like, I'm not going to keep playing macro against him because I've already found that I'm at a disadvantage there. And so when I play my customs, I also take a similar mindset. It's like, well, if I notice that my opponent is playing really greedy, then I'll optimize my builds towards that. Because you're never, it's easy to think on the ladder, you're playing barcode after barcode after barcode. Everyone is the same. You can't go into the game with any expectations because you don't know what your opponent's going to do. A tournament is never like that. You always have some expectation of how your opponent will play. You have an idea of their strengths and weaknesses, and to not take advantage of that seems like you're missing a big part of your game plan.
I agree with that. Rotti, I guess we can go back to your Warcraft 3 days if you wanted to. When you go into, we were talking about custom games and getting ready to prepare. how do you capitalize on that practice? What are you trying to focus on? You know you have an issue, or how do you fix that issue, or how do you help someone fix an issue?
Well, that's what I said. I'm a bad example because I am one of those guys that was still playing orc versus orc all the time while I was already good in it. It was my favorite matchup and I was very good at it. But if I played 20 games a day, then 18 of them were orc versus orc. Even though I should have been practicing orc versus night elf and orc versus undead, it's just in a weird way I felt that I was still young, so I didn't really see this as like my job. I really have to perform. I just wanted to truly enjoy the game, and I had most fun playing mirror matchups and being very good at that. And obviously, I enjoy winning a lot more than I enjoy losing. So I knew I was stubborn, and I knew what I was doing was wrong. And if I honestly like wanted to go to this next big foreign tournament and go all the way, I knew I had to work on specific matchups. But for some reason, it's like this inner fear or something. I can't really describe what it is. It's just I rather avoid it so I don't acknowledge how big of the problem it really is, and then just focus on the good things like my mirror matchup, which was really good. So but I mean that's not the right way to go at it. Like you should just like accept. It all starts with acceptance. Like, all right, I'm bad at this matchup. I will most likely lose, but I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to try to find the things in this matchup that I enjoy, that I will love, and then I will get better at it.
Are we talking about ladders still? Or are we talking about like a cocaine addiction here?
I can't
behind the
put
scenes
it
with
on,
Rotti.
like- No, it's really weird how it worked. I knew I should have been working on matchups, but I just didn't want to put myself through it. I was pretty young back then, so I was also a little bit of a whiny kid. Just like I think a lot of the StarCraft 2 pro gamers right now are still pretty young, and I think it comes with age. But especially back then, I was a little bit of a rager, like not a bad one that said the worst things out there, but definitely one that hit his keyboard a few times or would just get this desperation feeling, like, oh, why is this happening? And then like I was just like, oh, and this is imbalance, that is imbalance, that is imbalance. So I'm just going to play against my own race because that's not imbalanced.
Roddy, is the rage supposed to go away when you get older?
Yeah, I've calmed down a lot. I don't know. I don't know if it works for everybody, but
Hey, how old are you?
27.
Ah, there's still hope.
Honestly,
Yeah,
it kind of
no,
sounds
the
like
rage is definitely a lot less. Sorry, Riff, but to sum it up, like I definitely don't rage as how I used to do in my Warcraft 3 days. Because in my Warcraft 3 days, I used to hit my keyboards a lot. Like I contacted Fnatic every 2 weeks for a new keyboard because like my spacebars kept broken. And they gave me these Everglide keyboards, and they really couldn't handle a single hit. And I knew I shouldn't, but like then when I lost another game against Night Elf and my hero died, I just went nuts. And now these days, if I'm playing all by myself, like if I stream, then obviously I realize that I have an image to uphold. I'm not saying that I'm not. No, I'm not saying that I'm not myself, but I will not say the things that. Like if I'm all playing here all by myself with no stream, like yesterday on a certain moment, I am really like, oh Jesus, dot 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 dot. You know where it goes, like where I just like kind of scream, but I don't really hit anything anymore. That goes away, so it comes on.
I'm glad to hear that.
it just sounds like really angry ladder anxiety. Is what I'm feeling on this.
I don't know, sometimes it just feels good to kind of yell, but like I don't like to be like this weird kid who's streaming and then starts yelling because it seems like you're screaming for attention. But if I sit alone in my room and I like have zerglings running by my force fields, it's definitely like fuck.
Now, Rifkin, I mean, you were what, Masters, right?
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, you pull other people into a game just to try to work on some things.
I was just a ladder hero. Then I started this whole trying to cast thing. I don't know, dude. These guys are better sources of information.
All right, so you're excited, Kevin QXC, about getting in there and having the possibility to have more people to ladder with. So, how much do you try to vary your practice partners? You don't want to. Do you try to not go against the same Zerg or Protoss?
Honestly, it's so hard to find people to practice with that I pretty much take whoever wants to play.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I mean I've oftentimes asked several players if I could just like spectate their cut. Like I won't cast it, I won't share the replays. Like I just want to watch to learn, right? And it's interesting because I'm not gonna go name names or anything, but like there's some guys who'll do kind of what we've been describing. Like they'll play about 3 or 4, then they're like, "Fuck it, I'm done." But then you get some guys who, and I haven't seen this. Like Hearthstone was telling me, him and 4GG played like 300, 600 games together over the last like half a year practicing for WCS. So I guess like you got to find that one guy who's willing to put up your shit. Because if you do, he'll be like an invaluable resource for
Well,
like months to
yeah, I
come.
mean,
There is
it's not
one
even
downside. Yeah. Sorry, Kev, go ahead.
it's not even putting up with your shit. It's just somebody who's professional enough to recognize that it literally you have to distance your emotions from the strategies that people use. Like if you really want to be good, any strategy is valid and you have to, be accepting of whatever your opponent does and recognize that, if it beats you, then it's a valid thing to be doing. But you were saying that if Hearthstone and 4GG meet, then
Well, I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
that's what you gotta look for, right? Like that one guy who'll play 300 games with you, and it kind of shows like how much I'd say Hearthstone more so than 4GG, but how much they both improved this year. And if that's the case, where like maybe it's not just them fighting each other, obviously they're fighting other people. It's not like some exclusive relationship thing. I mean, you're gonna like see that improvement, and I think it shows through like results and like through seeing these games get played out. I mean, it's hard, and I don't know the perspective because I'm not a pro player and I don't do these custom games. But man, I can just speak from knowing these guys that cast these stupid daily cups all the time. Like you see them improve, you see them get further. You see, like what you're describing is totally worth it. Like just getting that partner who'll like practice with you is such a big deal. I think.
The only downside to that, though, Riff, is that if you keep playing too much against one guy, then in a certain moment you start really training against this one guy, and you don't necessarily start training against the race anymore.
That's
Because
true.
it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter how many games you play, unless you're like an exceptional player, you will always have certain weaknesses in your play, and you will always have certain strengths. But of course, for every player, that's different. So obviously, both 4GG and Hearthstone are going to learn shit tons of playing crazy amount of games against each other. But it is very important that you do have somebody else as well, because on a certain point, Kevin is not practicing. That's Hearthstone, not a Kevin. Jesus, it's like Kevin Illuminati over here.
We
Yeah,
could have like the Kevin show. Why are
Yeah.
three of you not doing a show together? Seriously.
Like Hearthstone isn't like practicing PvT anymore. He's practicing P versus 4GG, and if he
Yeah.
suddenly goes up against a Terran like Cast or whatever, it's different. It's a different player with different strengths, different focus on certain elements in the game. So obviously, it's great having one guy that wants to play with you all the time, but it's important that you don't only play that matchup against that one guy, because that's not going to get the job done either.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, so moving on from practice, a lot of people are practicing. We got a big thing coming up, the global finals. It's going to be exciting. I feel this was. I think I'm a little more excited about this tournament than I was last year's BlizzCon. So I'm not going to go through. We're not going to go through line by line and say who. Whatever. I'm going to read off the list though of the players we have appearing. Bomber.
You have the bracket?
I do. I'll link that for you guys.
Sure.
I'm gonna link it in the chat.
I'm gonna bring it up on my other one.
There's the bracket for this year. We've got Bomber, Jadong, Stardust, MMA, MC Hero, Polk Classic, San, Jokji, Zest, Life, Sue, Tasia, Hyun, and Innovation. There's some powerful Terran right there. That's what I'm seeing when I look at this bracket. Riff, what are you thinking? You think who do you have favored for this?
I'm rooting for MMA, pretty hardcore. I mean, I know he's not statistically like the favorite or anything like this, but I'm just a big MMA fan. So for me, it's always like heart over head, like every single time. So that's who I'm gunning for. We're actually trying to make an emoticon for him on the channel that we could spam during the thing.
What about you, Rotti? You've been following these guys quite heavily, obviously.
Yeah, no, I really like the bracket. I think a lot of great matchups. But you gotta love Bomber's bracket, man. Jesus, what a fantastic bracket for Bomber. It's like going up against Jadong in the first round. I think that is a match that, knowing how confident Bomber is, he barely takes him serious. Obviously, he's gonna have to take him very serious because it's freaking Jadong. But Bomber is on fire. Then in round 2, he's gonna get Stardust or MMA. I think that Bomber would wipe the floor with both of those guys, in all honesty, especially with the way that Bomber has been playing TVT over the last few months. He's an absolute monster in it. And then in the semi-final, he gets either Polt or Classic or MC or Hero. That's, I don't know, I think this is looking really good for Bomber. The final could get very difficult for him, though, because, of course, on the bottom side of the bracket, you have Zest, you have Sue, Tasia, Where's Innovation? Oh, he's oh my god, the bottom side of the bracket.
Yeah, right. That Innovation match. Hyun and Innovation. What the hell? That's gonna be so sick.
just the starting matchups are going to be insane. It's going to be a great BlizzCon to watch. Kevin, QXC, Kevin, do you have any favorites for this?
No, man. There's just I don't think there's really any players that seem missing from this tournament.
Yeah.
Maybe
This is
Cure.
pretty sweet.
Cure might be the most notable
I
person.
kind of feel like Cure blossomed late though, so for him to not be here
and only
isn't inappropriate or
temporarily.
anything.
Well,
Yeah.
And only temporarily.
I'm a big Cure fan. I wish he was there, but it kind
mean-
of makes sense too. It was really like an end of the year thing for him.
So I understand that BlizzCon is the culmination of the players over the course of the year, and that is, that's how it works, and that makes sense to me. But the fact of the matter is that people just aren't the same players they were at the beginning of the year as they are now. And I would really like to see some kind of scaling system where points you actually earn, like the amount of points that you get from events increases the closer you get to BlizzCon. Because to me, it's like, let's say BlizzCon is supposed to be the top 16 players in the world when BlizzCon happens. Then, to me, the person who wins, the 1 or 2 or 3 premier tournaments right before BlizzCon should absolutely be there. But the way
that's
it
actually
works
pretty cool.
is
You're
like,
making a really good point.
if you didn't do well at the beginning of the year, and then let's say you win IEM Toronto, which had one of the most stacked lineups ever, you're not going to BlizzCon because you didn't do well enough consistently enough. Whereas somebody who won, let's say, 2 or 3 events at the beginning of the year started slumping really hard. Like, do they still actually deserve to be at BlizzCon? I don't know. But I think the current system doesn't take that into account in any way, really.
Well, the current system has a problem too. Where this season, like they had so many WCS points this year, like they were handing them out like candy. I think because I think they're trying to scale it back for next year a little bit too, right? So I like the idea. Like that's actually a really cool idea. I never would have thought of that. Like the scaling, like the closer you get, like maybe not significantly more, but still more would be really cool. Yeah. But I think definitely too the other part is like right now the players who could afford, who had a team that could send them to every event. Like I'm not saying it was unfair. I mean that's the way, that's the market, whatever. But they definitely had an advantage over those who may have been really good but couldn't afford to go to every single WCS point event this year.
Right.
I mean that's an argument that's been made very often, and I agree with that. Because like guys like MC and Sean and whatever, they get either invited or they just go everywhere, so they get all these points, and they have been getting points for just getting invited to tournaments, but. There is not really a counter argument because you can hardly say like, well, there's other guys that they're really good. They're really good, but they didn't go anywhere. But I still totally think they should deserve it. Like, there's no logic in that because then the whole system is flawed. Like if you're gonna earn points, quote unquote, then people have to earn points, and we can't really fault Blizzard for the fact that some teams don't allow all their players to travel. This is nothing that we can do about it. I feel.
Yeah, I would be okay if Korea earned more WCS points for their GSL than the other regions, or there was some kind of like special allowance. Like, Sue was actually pretty close to not making it to BlizzCon, right? That's true?
No, that's correct. No, you're true. If he would have lost in the semifinal, he would have been done.
Right. I think it's fair to say it's safe to say that would be bullshit. If Sue multiple time second place in the hardest tournament in the world did not make it to BlizzCon, which is supposed to be the top 16 players in the world, that would be nonsense. Fortunately, he made it. He did really well in the last season, but I would be okay if GSL in Korea was worth some significantly larger portion of points, so that players who want to just stay in Korea and be the absolute best they can do that. Because there is a cost to traveling. You just are not as good when you travel. I don't think there's any way to reason around that. There are valuable things to learn when you travel, and there are skills involved in playing at foreign events. But in terms of just playing games and optimizing your schedule, travel is incredibly bad for that.
So now with the region lock, though, they're still able to perform in tournaments with like the IEM circuit and the DreamHack circuit, correct?
The region lock is only for WCS.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I mean, they're still going to be able to get a significant amount of points. Like they're still going to
right, but that's only for people who can travel. For most of the Kesper players, I bet a lot of them would travel, but
Yeah, they got the money, but
Tesla's-
they're not allowed.
Yeah, like
Yeah, Tesla is very restrictive about where they send their players. They would barely even send their players to China.
But
Right.
this is already being addressed within Blizzard, within the esports team. They know it, and obviously I can't talk about it, but I know some very cool things are coming for Korea in 2015. So that is a problem that has been acknowledged and is being addressed. And I like the solution a lot, but I'm sorry I can't talk about it yet. Otherwise I lose my job, Kappa.
No, it's all good, but that sounded really
Let's reassure.
PR like. Yeah, that was good. I
I have
that.
my moments.
Yeah, like showing on shows, no pants, the making up for it later with a sick Korean
As long as nobody makes a highlight clip of that, I'm good.
There hasn't been one of the show yet, so I think you're good.
So it's like Rifkin's gonna make his first GIF.
No, don't do it, Riff. Don't do it.
Oh, 1 second, guys. Yep, good to go. All right, so let me readjust that, put them all back in the right spot. All right, so we're going to move on to questions for the show. Does anyone need a break?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm fine.
Good. All right, cool. I'll look at one I got on Twitter. If you want to tweet a question, you can. I've got the little laptop open at LycanGTV. I'm going to write it in here. Tweet a question. We'll address it. Anyway, so this question is, it's basic scientific method, one variable at a time, right? Why is balance in big rounds? So the question being, when patches come out, they go for multiple things at once. Why is it that they don't do one thing at a time?
So
'Cause-
one thing to keep in mind is we don't actually know how Blizzard tests the patches internally, right? Because each one could have been tested alone, and then they combine them together. I'm not saying that they actually do that, but we don't have complete information to say that they don't. The other thing is Blizzard hates strategies, and when they decide something's a problem, they want it to never, ever be a problem ever again.
Well, I think too, we got to remember there's like this whole concept of perfect imbalance too. And like if you tweak something like, okay, if this week what mines look good, but you tweak that before players get a chance to actually learn how to deal with them, or like actually, go back to the point I talked about, like Charge-Lot Archons or Charge-Lot Storms. I mean, like if you had changed and balanced Terran versus Protoss before Terrans got to the point of realizing, oh, Widow mines are good, like you've actually screwed with things. So you kind of have to let it stew so players get a chance to figure it out. And if things go so long that they're broken, Blizzard obviously steps in. I mean, like, maybe not broken, but the Thor change I think is another good example of this. Like Mutalisks, there were the Terrans that could deal with them, they're the Terrans that couldn't. But a small change fixed everything. If they had done that right away, then there never would have been like that dance in between where people were trying to figure out the game.
That's not what his question is, though. His question
Isn't
is
it just he's talking about the big waves or no?
no. Well, but he's not saying like why do they wait so long. He's saying why do they do so many things at once, which is different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
I
misunderstood.
actually don't think that our patches are that drastic. Like, it's not like I feel in the old days, in the Wings of Liberty days, there were indeed a lot of things, but I feel like most of the patches in Harder Swarm, it's all like either 1 or 0 changes. Per race. Like the most drastic thing I've seen were the Mothership Core changes, where it was like Vision and Time Warp and Energy, but even that was split over 2 patches or something. I don't think the patches are that drastic, in all honesty.
I think from the notes that Blizzard releases with their patches, I feel like they do, to some degree, try to go for things that aren't going to affect large amounts of the gamer strategies overall. They have a pinpointed, this is what we're trying to address.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and I think they generally do a pretty good job of it. As far as like why do they do it? It's I don't think you can really say like, well, why does Blizzard release multiple changes per patch? I understand why they wait, and that was what Rifkin was saying. But they could still wait and then only patch one thing at a time. The other thing to take into consideration is sometimes they'll have a patch and there will be 4 or 5 changes, but every change is kind of independent. Like when they buff Thors, literally the only thing that's changing is TVZ in that very specific relationship. And so they can also change some other unit, and it's not like confounding an experiment here with multiple variables. Like they are actually totally separate.
Right.
Spore crawlers, I think, is another good example of that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they changed spore crawlers. They could have changed literally anything else in the game because the only situation that affects is ZVZ.
Yep.
Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so moving on. Rotti, this one's for you. This guy from Alex on Twitter, he wants to know, will that information that you can't really talk about, can you hint whether it'll be announced at BlizzCon, post BlizzCon, pre BlizzCon?
I think post BlizzCon, because I think for now, of course, we want all eyes on BlizzCon. We want everybody to look forward to BlizzCon, and you don't really want to distract the people by throwing up a ball like, hey, let's talk about 2015 instead. And oh yeah, we're playing the grand finals this weekend too. So I don't actually know for sure, so I can't confirm. But it only makes sense to me that this is going to be after BlizzCon.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move to Reddit for this one. This one coming from Nice Username. General thoughts on Foreigner performance in round of 8. I'll throw this to you, Rotti, again. What do you feel, I guess, overall about the performance? Yes, they were 3-0, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they played horribly.
No, and I don't think they did. I think it was just a combination of they were playing against a better player, and then you need a little bit of luck on your side. And some days you have it, and some days you carry momentum. Some days the things that you have in mind. It doesn't even necessarily come down to rolling the dice, but there are certain risks, and sometimes you get away with small things, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes your proxy gets spotted, sometimes it doesn't, and they didn't have any luck on their side, and they were going up against superior players. So. Yeah, my thoughts is that it was unfortunate because I know, even though Hawk has never took a map of Xian, I know that if everything lines up well, Hawk can defeat Xian in a crazy series. Like Hawk has played some really, really solid PvZ over the last 6 months, and he has defeated players of the caliber of Xian. So, but he needs everything to go right on the stage like this, and it just didn't.
Yeah.
Scarlet, she has shown us too that she's amazing. She can compete with the best of the best out there, but I don't know. It wasn't the right day, I guess. It happens. So yeah, I was disappointed, and just like I'm sure that both Scarlet and Hawk were disappointed, but I don't want to say that they played terrible, because that's not the case. It wasn't meant to be. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, it's interesting in StarCraft. The amount of skill difference between two players that requires a series to go 3-0 is actually relatively small. Saying that,
Yep.
oh, this player 3-0'd this other player, is not like, wow, this player that got 3-0'd is garbage. It's like this better player is actually just, a little bit better overall. And so they won every single game. And, we've seen 3-0s, 4-0s, even between top Koreans in finals, right? And I unfortunately didn't watch Huck's series, and I was planning to watch the VODs for Heart Scarlet, so I only saw a little bit of that. But I think the biggest thing is you have to actually see the games before you evaluate. A lot of people will just check the results and be like, oh, Koreans 3-0, like foreigners are garbage. But unless you watch the games and know what's going on, you really can't say that.
Yeah. I'm going to have to agree 100%. I mean, it sucks too, because you get a lot of these really good games that are like, you don't know that was a 40-minute back and forth. It was still 3-0, right. But you don't know the way the game laid out. And it's so rare where you can sit there and be like, wow, that guy just made a shitty fucking move. He moved all command all his use. Like, no. It's like one player always plays good, and the other player just played exceptionally better. And it just sucks that I think a lot of the community, and this kind of, I think, really influences going back to that balance thing too a little bit, where they just see that stuff, no one looks into it, they're just like, okay, this is, Hyun's OP, Huck sucks. Not a chance.
All right. Why, this one's going to you, Riff. Why don't broadcasters show more POV footage?
Well, that's not, you can't feel that one to me, man. I can't show POV footage.
Poor Riff, like, how's Riff supposed
to? I would love to, but
Rifkin, can you explain to me why you don't have webcams in the homes of all pro players?
No.
Actually, I'm gonna throw this one back at you, QXC, because we've been actually getting players to use webcams during our show matches, and it's actually been going really cool.
Oh, wait, is POV something else? I thought you meant first-person view.
Yeah, like when you go into the game
screen.
And the game screen.
It looks awful if you do it in StarCraft, because you don't see their mouse clicks.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You don't click, and the camera doesn't jump. It floats, or
When you first-person view someone in the game, they look like a ghost or something. They like wisp around and fade in and out.
It's so weird how it does that.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's not at all good for spectating.
It's nowhere near the same. So Rift can't possibly do that. If you ask, I can give a little bit of information about that. I completely agree with the person that it looks awesome. I know that Europe did it last weekend, but I am no tech expert by any means. I'm actually pretty bad with tech, but I've requested this at WCS America because I really love it too. And we do have two TVs in front of the stage, so the people in the studio can watch the real first-person view of both players. But to put that into the machine that actually allows you to broadcast that side as well. You need a lot of equipment, a lot of cabling, and it's all really expensive. Some days we have it, and then some days we don't. I exactly don't know what it is about, but it's because like equipment travels a lot as well within the company because there are events, like if there is a Hearthstone event and suddenly some of our equipment is gone, or World of Tanks or whatever. All I know is that it's really expensive and it requires a lot of cabling and yada yada yada. But
Well,
if the resources are there, the technology is there. It's just like
No, no, yeah, yeah, and yeah, no, you're right. It's if they were gonna do the actual first person, so it doesn't look like that crappy ghost stuff that QXC was talking about, it takes the capture, the ability to capture those two different cameras, so they might have them split coming out of there, and
it's
then
a lot of extra inputs into this fancy machine that has like all the preview monitors.
TriCaster or
Well, I
the
think
Yes.
Black Magic Switch.
I mean,
Yeah,
they used to do it in Brood Wars, so like it's obviously possible, and
Yeah.
we've seen it in events. But how much
I
does
think-
it? The company has to balance. How much does this actually add to the broadcast, and how much does it cost to do it? And so far, obviously, that balance is not off worth it.
And there is one more thing, I believe, by the way. Because you have 60 hertz, and what do most players play on QXC? Because I actually just play on standard 60, but
I think a lot of people play on 120.
yeah, exactly.
I'm not.
All right,
I'm
so
not that kind of person. I don't really care.
okay, so there are some people, some players in WCS America that are extremely keen on playing with 120 hertz. But if they play on if we want to take their first-person footage, they can play on 120 hertz. So that is a balance that you want to weigh out. Do you want to make the player happy, or do you want to stream their first-person view? Because for some reason you can't take their feed of 120 hertz. It has to be scaled back to make sure that it comes out properly on the broadcast. I'm glad that I thought of
Lycan,
that because that's actually an extremely pretty important thing.
there you go.
Lycan, did you just click a screamer or something? Why is chat freaking out right now?
I don't know.
Well, I think there's one thing here too that's really important that I think no one's really thinking about either, and it's about considering when you swap to that. Because take an example, you watch me observe. When I'm casting and observing, it's horrible to look at sometimes, and even I'm fully aware of this. But then you get someone like Funker and Fezza, and it's just sick because they're dedicated to it. So you can tell the difference of good versus bad there. The last thing you want to do is, no matter how cool point of view footage is, you don't want to cut to it at a stupid moment where they're like maybe looking at their workers, and then you're just like, oh.
But that
well,
all comes down to having a good technical director. It's very simple to solve that. Like
Right,
we have
so-
we have a guy within WCS America. His name is Brett, and I think Brett is a very smart guy. I think it's really important that your technical director is not just a good technical director, but someone who really loves StarCraft. So he
Right,
knows what the viewers
yes.
wants to see, and he realizes what is a good moment to swap in and out. But Brett is that guy. Like our technical director is just like an avid member of our community. If he wasn't working, he'd be playing the game. He's like high diamond, low master. He's hovering around that, but he knows and he watches everything. So it's awesome to have someone into the production room who actually just really loves the game and knows when to swap in and out.
Yeah.
Well, see, I'm glad you brought that up because that's the thing too, and I've experienced this through being a community caster a lot. There are a lot of instances where people don't actually they're just there for the job because of whatever, and I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything, but there are
Do it,
instances
Riff.
where
Come on. Stir up
where
some
people
drama.
don't know
It's
anything about
been
StarCraft,
quiet.
and you're like, why are you in charge?
Who
So
can
that's
we
what I'm saying.
follow
Like,
at @NoPassion SE2? Come on, give it to us.
ZG Gaming. But no, I mean,
Aw.
really, the thing is, you can't just say, because the question was kind of a blanket question. You can't just have someone decide, oh, let's do player point of views, because there is a lot more that goes at the technical side, the expensive side that Rada brings up, the point that you have to have somebody who knows what they're doing. I mean, there's so much about it that can make it go wrong. I think it's really cool when it's done right, though, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. What's next? All right, so I don't want to touch that one. All right, so balance aside, do you guys think it's more fun to watch TVX now and the Terran buffs good for the spectator side of StarCraft 2? He feels that TVX is much more action-packed than before with parade pushes in TVZ and mine pushes and drops in TVP. So overall, with the changes, he's asking, do you think it's more fun to watch TVX now?
I'm the first thing I want to say, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, is the fact that Terran has no late game
is actually one of the reasons that it's like probably one of the most action-packed races all the time, because every Terran feels the clock against Protoss and to some extent against Zerg. It's like if I don't win by the time these things happen, I lose. And so they feel much more pressure to be aggressive. I don't think I can answer this question fairly though, because I basically only watch Terran.
Rotti, what do you think about watching TVX now?
So TVX, you just mean like Terran versus anything?
Yeah, Terran versus Protoss, Terran versus Zerg, or you can highlight one if you want. I mean, do you think
Well,
it's...
I don't think that Terran versus Protoss is better now than it was before, but maybe it will still come. I don't know. Like I was very, very generally happy with the series between Liquid Hero and Polt last weekend. I thought it was an awesome series. Hero played fantastic first two games, and he showed us that you can still get away with some things, but overall, since the new Widow Mines, no, I do not like Terran vs. Protoss more than I did before. We were talking about it earlier in the show. I love the High Templar Chartwell's openings, and I'm sad that it's pretty much gone. I'm not saying that it's absolutely undoable, but you sort of have to trick your opponent or somehow do something crazy to just straight up get away with it. Otherwise, Mines will just wreck you. It's just the way it is. TVT, it's a little bit of a coin flip right now because TVT is either really ugly or really amazing. I feel there's almost no in between. Like either the games end at like the 9 or 10 minute mark with a lot of SCVs dying and both players attacking each other, or just like 3 Hellions killing a bunch of Marines and then the additional Marines, and a matter of fact, kill the Terran. Or you have a Bomber versus Bolt series like we had yesterday, and then it's just like, oh my god, greatest matchup ever. So I don't know. And TVZ, I mean, TVZ definitely became a lot better if you're on the Terran side of things, that's for sure. The mine made life a little better. The Tor switch was, or the Tor tweak was pretty good. I don't know. I wouldn't say that it's really more exciting or less exciting.
And
I think that I personally enjoy watching Terran versus blank matches because it feels like there's usually more going on. Like Zerg versus Zerg, AFK 20 minutes make roaches. Protoss versus Zerg, maybe not as bad, but still kind of like...
You can't say that about ZVZ. ZVZ is actually a pretty cool matchup. I feel we are often being mean to the Zerg players, but ZVZ is actually
I'm generalizing.
Cool.
I will say I am generalizing 100%, but I'm saying in general, like it feels like there's just more going on in a Terran versus anybody game. Like QXC said, you're against the clock, so that's why you have Terran players pushing against the Nexus early, opposed to sitting in their base, putting 5 bunkers down and trying to take a third or something. I mean, it feels like there's more going on when I watch, at least, and I watch all the matchups. So I mean, I'm not saying that there's no balance. I'm not saying this is OP versus that. I just say I feel when I watch a Terran game, it feels like there's more going on both sides of the field.
all right. So this question is a little more, is definitely, I guess we could go towards Rotti and Riff. Can we have an actual discussion on how much casters get paid? And I don't expect you guys to go into this one in detail, but the question is I know that Rotterdam and Athenius are pretty underpaid, probably less than $20,000 a year from WCS America, because ESL refuses to let them participate in the show's pre-production and graphics ideas set up at the studio or interviews. That doesn't sound true to me. Whatever. How can a caster survive in the scene, and why don't organizations allow casters to participate more actively in preparation or style of the show? And I want to say that with my little understanding is that there is quite a bit of involvement from you guys and input into the show, but maybe I'm wrong.
I've got a really short answer, so can I go first?
Sure, go for it, man.
I've been paid 2 times in the entirety of esports. I have no context here.
Okay,
Good
is that
answer.
all you want to say?
That's it. Yeah, I've been paid
This is
2
a really-
times, so I don't have anything I can add to this.
This
I
is a
feel-
really weird question.
I feel like it's fishing
Okay.
for something, but go
Okay,
ahead,
I can now talk a little bit. Saying that ESL refuses to let us participate in the show pre-production graphics that they set up with the studios is indeed sort of wrong. But obviously, I'm not going to drive 45 minutes to the studio 4 days a week, working forward towards the event if I only get paid in the weekend. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. You know, I'm a human being too, and I have to pay rent and I have to pay the lease to my car. I cannot just work as a volunteer. As much as I've done this in the last 10 years of esports, I've flown around the world multiple times and not being paid for events in the past. But now you're 27, I can't do that anymore. That's just the way it is. You know, at a certain time you have to grow up. The thing is that the budget for WCS America was not very big this year. Of course, people often forget about this, but there was a lot of drama within WCS as well. NESL was running season one, suddenly it went to ESL. Needless to say, there is a little bit of dirt behind the scenes. I'm not sure how much I can tap into it. I am not going to tap into it, but all I can say is that this is not the year that we had in mind. For me, life was obviously a lot easier when I was just working at NESL because I was an actual NESL employee. They were paying me for, just being there as an office job. Not like I was balling out of control, but I definitely couldn't complain. Now I just get paid for the days I work. We have some rehearsal days, but most of the time it's just one day before the actual event, and that is more a tech rehearsal than anything else. Because obviously I can't really give them creative feedback about whatever I want when it's only one day to shoot stuff. So then it's already getting kind of late. I do have a lot of input in how camera shots are being set up and stuff like that. I do go over all the player pieces, but I don't get involved in making them, which is obviously something I would love to do because I think I am closest to the product together with Nathanias in the entire company. Like no one than Nate or me watches more StarCraft 2 than anybody else in ESL America. Put it like that. So I feel that we should be indeed the ones that are on top of that. But yeah, once again, I live 50 minutes away from the studio. I'm 27 years old. I can't just work for free. The reason why I'm not full time is also because, like we said, a lot of things happened within WCS America. There were a lot of costs on both Blizzard sides and ESL and NESL that it was just not the year that everybody had in mind. That's all I can say about it now. I do hope, of course, this will be different. 2015, I really want to be more involved and closer because I think I personally have a lot of creative ideas and I think I can make this show a lot better. And I don't want to be the guy that just shows up, sits on the chair, and then just talks about the game. Like I really want to give it my all to make this an awesome show and feel extremely proud of it. How can a caster survive if I only work so many days? Well, Mr. Bitter landed a job at Red Bull and he decided to hire me for every single show that Red Bull had this year. Needless to say, without Red Bull, this would have been a very, very difficult year for me. But since I did all the Red Bull shows, I'm fine. And also, I had some other stuff like a Lenovo commercial, some IEM qualifiers. It's just all the things that add up. But in the end of the day, it all comes down to money. Like if ESL America would have a massive budget to produce WCS America, then they would be like, hey, Nate and Rotti, all right, sign the contract. We hire you 5 days a week. You're working on the show. Make this the best show ever. But WCS is expensive for everybody involved. It's expensive for the production companies. It's expensive for Blizzard. And on a certain point, like even though yippee-yi-yo, we all love StarCraft, it can't cost too much money. So that's why there has to be a line drawn somewhere. And unfortunately, perhaps for Nate and me, the line was drawn at the casters not being full time. Because in Europe they are, but we are not. But we'll see how it goes in the future.
Bring back fitness.
So, Rotti, would you say that Mr. Bitter saved esports?
No, Mr. Bitter has indeed been. He's been saving esports. He's been saving StarCraft for us off the record. I like to tease Ben a lot, but I think that especially in the North American scene, like it's funny how it happened as well. Because us StarCraft scene, we're very hard to please, and we're all so picky. And Red Bull announces a tournament in Atlanta, and almost nobody shows up. Almost nobody has interest. Well, it was a great tournament. It was a great prize distribution. It was just a lot of things about it were awesome. Even the production of it was pretty cool. And then everybody just looks at it like, yeah, tournament. And then like at the same time, like, outside North America, we have no opportunities to improve as a player. And it's like, no, this is your tournament. Why is nobody going? And in the end, suddenly people were sitting at home. It's like, hey, that actually seems like a tournament we should have gone to. And then that's when you see like 2 months later, Red Bull Battlegrounds Detroit is already a lot more saturated and there's a lot of better players. But to go back to the initial question, Bitter has been saving esports a little bit. He's also been saving his belly. He's eating a lot. Okay.
And so you didn't feel like I was putting you on the spot, Riff, with that earlier. I figured, you've had a lot of dealings, with the players and personalities around. I figured you might have had some insight into how things work on the back end.
So much what we do, man, it's just us. It's like, I'm not gonna get into this big like cool story pro moment, but like we get around in CommuniCast sometimes, but even then, like whether it's Red Bull, which is really awesome, or whether it's like Acer Team Story Cup, like we're still like on the outskirts of things. We're not really on the in for most stuff. It's just like, oh, you're here, great, do this, see you later. So I feel like I didn't know what you wanted me to do, like asking what's it like to get paid, and I'm just like, I don't know.
No, I fully understand.
The real answer is, I think his question is really like, how do you survive in esports? And the real answer is, you don't do things that cost a lot of money. You make a lot of sacrifices. You have to be content with not really doing anything extravagant, and you just hope for the best. You try your hardest, and
Yeah.
you hope that it'll pay off, and the years of sacrifice that you put in will result in something.
I mean, like it
That's
all comes
it.
down to following your heart as well in the end, you know, like we all make jokes about the passion and shit, but I'm very well aware of the fact that maybe a year or two or a year ago, I maybe should have looked into Dota, maybe should have looked into League, or hey, Hearthstone is released, or hey, here's Heroes of the Storm. And like obviously if you just jump on it immediately while already having your feet into the scene and having a lot of connections, I can make something out of that, but I just don't feel any connection with any of those games at all. Like, I might like to play a game of Dota once in a blue moon, but I'm just not feeling it. So, maybe it's a little stubborn, and you could even say maybe it's not necessarily the best choice. But for now, I only focus on StarCraft. It's truly the only game that I want to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna agree with that too. Like I can watch League of Legends for like 5 minutes before I
Yeah,
get bored.
and I
I
appreciate
can't do
I
this.
appreciate a good show of Dota. I appreciate like the international. It's awesome to watch and stuff, but that doesn't mean that I want to get involved with it myself. This is like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
All right. So real quick, QXC has to skedaddle. So QXC, thank you for coming, man. I appreciate it as always. Do you want to go ahead and give any shout outs? Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, just big shout out to my team, Complexity, for allowing me to continue to pursue on the subject of pursuing our dream. And there's no game I'd rather be playing than StarCraft. And
I'm tearing up.
yeah, and just our sponsors. And you can check us out at complexitygaming.com. And otherwise, I stream occasionally, twitch.tv/ColeQXC. And just follow me on Twitter at Cole_QXC. And that's about it. If you're interested in coaching, you can tweet at me or whatever, and we can get in touch. And big thanks to you for having me on the show. It was a lot of fun.
It's always good to have you here, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Later.
Bye.
All right, so I know you had to go, and I didn't want to interrupt, but there's one thing I want to bring up before we completely get off this topic of like the whole you put your sacrifices and hope it pays its due and all that. A year ago, we couldn't afford show matches. There was no subscribers option on base rate TV or anything like that. And we got lucky because we'd have like a couple people throwing $50 here and there, and we'd get to throw like a cool show match, Beastie Cutie versus somebody, best of 5. And over that time of just like the sacrifice and not really getting anything out of it, now we've got the subscriber base where we can put on tournaments, we can do our show matches. We don't have to just hope to God somebody comes along and puts us money into it. So as far as surviving in the scene, I think it's possible. Is it likely to happen for everybody? Like, should you pursue like career as a caster or something? Probably not. But I mean, if you've got the dedication and the passion, I think you can eventually make something. And as far as how do you survive, just keep your head down like QXC, make the sacrifices, and eventually it'll start paying off at some point.
Or you just end up homeless.
That too, yeah. Try to be positive here, Rotterdam.
Hey man,
Glass is half full, dude.
On a
what can I
semi,
say? The WCS season has ended. Red Bull is done for a little bit, so the next few months are going to get dicey over here as well, Riff. Don't worry. I hope
Dude,
there's
just
some
start
space.
streaming again. Like,
No, I'm
give me
working
an
on
excuse to sub to you. Like,
No. With it, I have said this too many times, but I literally have a tracking number right now of my video card. Hallelujah! It's on the way.
I know,
Getting a
I'm just giving
GeForce.
you this shit.
No, you should, because I've been. I'm pulling a tasteless over here. I'm very well aware of it, but.
so I have a question for you, Rotti, and maybe you did, and I don't know about it. But how did you, as a Warcraft 3 player, how did you not get sucked into the world of Warcraft?
Oh, I bought it when it was released, just because back then I was sort of going to college. It's not really college as in it is in America. Nothing fancy. It was a waste of time and it was really low level. But some people in that class, they were hyped about that game, and I was like, well, I play a lot of Warcraft 3. I'll try out World of Warcraft. So I bought the game, and then I don't know. I started as a Tauren. Taurus, no,
Yeah,
Tauren.
Torn. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that one, the big bull. And I got to level 18, and then I died a couple of times, and then I kept dying again. I had to pick up my body, and I was like, man, this game is really, really, really stupid. So then there was this other guy in my
You
class
play
who's
Orc, right? In
yes,
Warcraft 3? How do you
yeah,
not know what a Tauren's called? There was Tauren in
yeah.
Warcraft 3.
I
Come
know,
on,
but I
man.
thought they slightly changed the name. I know that it was the big bull and stuff. Anyway, so I was like level 18 and I kept dying and I had to pick up my body and I was like, man, this is really dumb. So then like next day to school, I was like, hey, any of you guys are still looking for World of Warcraft? And then this one kid called Naveen, he's like, yeah, I'm about to buy it today. I was like, well, it was like 50 whatever in the
Yeah, yeah.
store, euro I guess or dollars. And I was like, well, I'll give it to you for 35. He's like, deal. So I sold my account within 2 days and I never played it again.
Wow.
Man.
Usually someone has to go to 60 to sell back then. Holy crap. I got sucked in 2006 and I wish I had discovered StarCraft instead of World of Warcraft because it
I mean,
ate
it's
my
just not
life.
my game. I'm an RTS player. I like to make stuff happen. I like playing games when I feel for some reason there is a purpose. Like obviously the purpose should always be to have fun,
Hmm.
but like I like having like I feel that I'm working towards something, whether it's something big or something small. Like whether it's like me trying to land the job of my dreams, or if it's just me reaching a certain goal. And I just felt I had no goal in World of Warcraft. It just felt like I was burning time, and that is just not for me.
It's a black hole of time. What about you, Riff? Do you ever play
More than I'm willing to admit.
it?
A lot more than I'm willing to admit.
All right, so back to esports. Back to this. Let's see if we got anything else in this questions thread. All right, so this one, it's a lower level question, but why bother building Marines in TvP? It seems like Marauders would be better at tanking Colossus shots, and they deal bonus damage to Stalkers and
Well,
Colossus.
I'm
there's
sorry,
this
this is a
unit.
terrible
There's this
question.
unit called. And there's a unit called the Zealot, and it's pretty good against the Marauder. And there's also this unit called the Immortal.
I
And
love-
then there's
You look at the dynamic too, by the way. Like a Marauder shoots a Stalker, and it's like bam, half health, right?
Yeah.
Then the Marauder shoots a Zealot, like right in the head, and
It's
he's
like-
like, "What was that? Is there a fly nearby?" Like,
I think one of the funniest moments is when like the Marauder actually or like the Zealot has like some armor upgrade, and you have like this Zealot that's let's say on like 40
Oh my
something HP, and it really looks like the Marauder is about to kill it. It's about to kill it. It's about to
I know,
kill
it's
it,
like
and then the
9
Zealot kills the
shots.
Marauder.
yeah.
So yeah, that's the answer.
Yep, need Marines. Marines.
Yeah, Marines be the DPS. Although it is funny because again, I referenced it earlier in the show, but I mean, like Ian Cass too. If someone gets that upgrade late, Marines are garbage as well. Like if you got level 3 armor on Zealots and Guardian Shield, those Marines are hitting for like 1. It's so stupid.
All right.
And in this day and age, it's a lot harder for Protoss to get that massive upgrade advantage that we used to have. Like, it's so hard to get away with that double fort shit.
Yo, it's funny because for a long time it was that situation too, where like it almost felt like it couldn't be punished. You're just
I
like,
know.
yeah, good times, right? No, f you. Like,
Yeah, no, like you had like a challenge within the actual game because like winning the PvT wasn't really the goal. Winning it in a funny way was the goal. So like, getting your 3-3 upgrades done at 14 minutes and 45 seconds against the Terran that was still 1-1, and you're like, yeah, this is why I was really playing this game because I knew I was going to win anyway. But yeah, those days, Brave, are long gone. I'm happy if I'm not behind in upgrades now.
I think that's pretty much it for the Reddit questions. It looks like. Wow. Anything else on Twitter? All right, so
I got a question for Rotterdam actually.
go ahead.
Yo, do you prefer casting sitting or standing?
No, I prefer casting sitting. It depends a lot on the, like there's different types of casting, of course. There are some days where you really know, all right, we're going to have to bring the hype. We want to get the audience behind it. And also like the inner hype that you can't really control. Like I love StarCraft. I'm always excited, but obviously I'm more excited for a certain show than I am for another show. Sometimes I look at the top 8, I was like, well, this is going to be, I hope it's going to be fun. And some days I look at this top 8 and I was like, man, can't wait. Like I'm genuinely excited about every single match. So if there is like a big audience behind me, then I like to stand because then it feels like I have more freedom. But if I'm sitting in the studio and I'm casting round of 32 matches of a huge favorite against a huge underdog, I'm not going to stand and scream my lungs out because I feel like then I'm just fooling my audience, Then I just
Fuck
sit.
you,
and I
Diamond
cast.
Guy. You're dead.
Yeah, then I just sit and cast the games. But it depends. It depends where we are and what kind of casting is required.
All right. What about Legacy of the Void?